Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hello, hello. Hola, ¿cómo estás? It is Tuesday night, and we are live here on YouTube as I try to do with some regularity. Um, Tonight, I have a very, very special guest, somewhat related to our conversation last week. If you weren't here last week, we talked about, having uh some uncomfortable conversations with family about money, particularly for those of us who find ourselves sort of sandwiched in between trying to raise children to be financially competent and financially confident people, as well as dealing with parents who are aging and making sure that, we can keep them from being scammed as well as have a good bead on their current financial situation, as we've got to kind of, many of us will find ourselves having to manage that as well. And so tonight's conversation is in that same vein. Last week we talked about how to talk to your family about money. And this week we're going to talk about setting financial boundaries and the ins and outs of that. But if you are new here, welcome. Welcome to the Picky Girl Nation. I am Adelia Borjade, aka Picky Girl Travels the World. I am very, very picky about lots of things. There is nothing wrong with that. And that's one of the reasons this channel is here, is to help women like you who are looking to live life on your own terms, to, center yourself for once. Maybe for you, you want to start traveling. Maybe you're thinking about moving abroad and you're trying to figure out how to make the money piece work. Well, you are in the right place. I am a financial educator as well as host of Reclaim the Retreat. Um, and it is literally my job to help you live your best life. So if that's the vibe that you are on, we are glad you are here. Please subscribe to the channel so that the next time I go live, like I typically do on Tuesdays, you'll get a notification, as well as it's a way to let YouTube know, hey, give me more of this content, put more of this in my feed. So without further ado, let me bring my guests on. Hello,
Hello.
hello.
Hi.
Now, um, I'm going to guess that a lot of the folks here are probably familiar with you as well as your YouTube channel. But just in case they aren't, would you mind introducing yourself to the people?
Yeah. So, hola, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Adelia. So, my name is Mira. I go by Sam. I am the host of the Black Woman Build Wealth YouTube channel. I do live in Canada, in Ottawa. I'm a solo mom of three beautiful kids that I'm raising, and I'm also a money coach, and also the founder of the Wealthy Black Woman Summit. So that's me.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, y'all, tonight we're going to be talking about money, and maybe a subject like I thought last week's conversation was an uncomfortable subject for a lot of folks, but this one is liable to be even more so. Um, so, one of the reasons that you are here is because last week's conversation resonated with you a lot.
Mhm.
Um, are you the oldest?
I am the oldest, yes.
Is he how many?
We are five.
5,
Yeah,
okay, and you are not originally from Canada, is that correct?
exactly. So I was born in Benin, West Africa. And so I came to Canada over 20 years ago. I came as an international student, ended up stayed way longer than I wanted, and mainly because of family obligations that really landed on my shoulders because I happen to be the oldest of the family. Yes.
All right. Now you used a key word there, obligation.
Mhm.
I have very strong feelings about obligations and women doing things out of obligation. So let's talk a little bit about what were some of the obligations and expectations that your family had of you as the oldest?
Yeah, so to be honest, that started at a young age. So I was literally, I'll say, groomed into, I guess, believing that because I'm the oldest, I'm literally responsible for the well-being of my younger siblings. So even back in Benin, when I was, way younger, I will be responsible to making sure that they were fed, they were, bathed, everything was, they did their homework and all that, especially when the parents were not home. I was in charge. And also because with I guess my three youngest siblings, there is a bit of age gap. So I was like in my early teens when they were born. So, I changed their diapers, I fed them, I did all that. And that was just the norm. As the oldest, you are responsible for that. So I grew up already thinking, that it's my responsibility. Their well-being is my responsibility. Of course, I didn't know that, the extension, how that would kind of like happen, especially coming here in Canada. So because I'm the oldest, I ended up being the first one coming a year after my younger sister came. And I'll say we were probably the two of us here for a good, I'll say, 5, 6 years, and maybe close to 10. And then after that, my three youngest siblings started coming. But on top of that, also, I have three cousins that I consider almost like my siblings because my aunt and my mom they have a business together. We grew up together, and so they got added to the mix as well. So on top of my three youngest siblings that stayed with me for good 10 years, I also have my two cousins who also stayed with me for their studies. So it was, when I came here and, I went to school, I graduated, I started working. In my mind, I'm like, okay, now I just want to make sure that everything is set up for myself. And I started working on that just, until literally when my younger siblings started coming. So when they started coming for me, there were no discussion. They were going to be staying with me. Nobody asked for my opinion. I literally actually moved cities because at the time I was living in Toronto and I love Toronto. But my youngest sister, when she came, she got her admission at the University of Ottawa. And so my mother was talking to my other sister, and they're like, "Well, my baby is going to Ottawa. We don't know anyone there. Would you guys mind if one person moved there?" So we were like, we're not gonna drop our job in Toronto just to move to Ottawa, just to be with your daughter. But of course, she insisted, and then we said, we'll look for jobs. If we find a job, then we'll move. I am the lucky. I happened to be the one landing a job in Ottawa, and I ended up actually moving. And in my mind, I knew that that would just for like a couple of years because I even asked for my job, my boss, my previous job, to give me a 1 year of leave without pay, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm giving it to you because I would like to have you back in about a year." So in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to Ottawa. I'm gonna help my sister, set up there for a year, and then I'm coming back to Toronto. Well, I've been in Ottawa for almost 13 years. So literally, because 2 years after my sister came, my twin brothers came, the two of them together. And then 1 year after they came, my two cousins came, actually 2 years. So in the span of like 5, 6 years, the five of them were here in Ottawa. They all got their admission at the Ottawa University. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not going back to Toronto at this point. And ended up buying a house. Honestly, I never thought of me buying a house at that time because let's say the life that I really wanted to have was not in line with home ownership. But with like three or four people, or close to five at one point living under your roof, it just made sense to buy a house. So I ended up buying a house, which was good, because we had the space for everybody to live in. And so that's really that. It's really that cultural aspect. Uh, for me, it was just normal. And it took me a while, Adelia. It really took me a while to start questioning it and start pushing it, pushing back. And of course, there was a lot of resistance, and it's still something that it's ongoing. It's creating frictions because it's almost became a different person, and everybody's scratching their head, wondering why. Right? So,
Why aren't you following the rules? Now, I'm sure there are several folks here who are here live or maybe even watching this on the replay where this sounds very familiar to them. Like, I am a Black American, and so this is something we see as well with particularly oldest daughters.
mm,
You are expected literally to be sort of a surrogate mother, whether mom is around or not. You're supposed to take that on.
yeah,
Um, and like you said, nobody asked you. The expectation is just there.
yeah.
Now, I am curious
Hmm.
when you made the decision or the decision was made for you to go abroad, to go to Canada. Um, Was anything said to you about, like, you're just gonna be the first, others are gonna come? Or was this a move that you were really making intending to be your launching pad?
Yeah, so we knew that our younger siblings will come at one point. We just didn't realize, and I say we because my sister and I were in it together. I was the one physically here, but like financially, she also had to help, and she still lives in Toronto. So we knew that they will be coming. We just didn't realize that we will be mainly responsible for them, financially, as having to stay here when in our mind we already checked out and we were like, okay, we're good with Canada, we're ready to go discover the world. That has delayed our moving abroad plans to for her and I. And so it's not really the ideal thing. So let's say we knew that they were coming, we just didn't realize that we will be taking like a huge responsibility in making sure that they were here, they were all settled, they all finished university now, they all graduated, they're on their own, they're working and everything. And just to mention, so I had like my youngest sibling, because it's like sorry, cousins, so it's three cousins, so two of them stayed with me, and I put my foot down for the last one, and that's when everything started. They're like, well, you had five of them staying with you, why wouldn't you accept the last one? And I'm like, and it's starting to make it a little bit like, is it that you have maybe anything against him? I'm like, I barely even saw him, because by the time he wasn't even born when I actually left Canada, when I left Benin. But he's my cousin and I love him. Yeah, it's not a matter of me having anything against him. I don't want that to be to show like that. But it's just like, by then, I already had my oldest, at least, and even about to have my twins. And I'm like, I don't have the energy for this anymore. Like, and we're not the only ones here anymore. We're like five or six of us here. He can go and stay with someone else. And that was really difficult. It was very difficult, because it was like, why would you do that? In our culture, it's normal for the oldest.
Well,
My mom,
you
yeah.
also have your own family, your own children at
Yeah.
the same time.
Yes, but that is because it's very cultural. And even growing up, my mother, so my mother had her three sisters staying with us, and she was married with kids, and even with that, she had her sisters staying with us, same thing through university. So for her, it's like, I did that for other people. That's what we do in our culture. Why are you resisting it? Why are you pushing back? It's just that. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, you did it. But at the same time, there are dreams that even I know my mom would have wanted to achieve, that she didn't do because of family obligations. And so she's like, yeah, and she even told me, she's like, she's the oldest daughter. She's not the oldest child, but she's the oldest daughter. And a lot of things actually fell on her shoulders, because my uncle is like, I don't want to do it. So my mom is like, well, he's not gonna do it. We need to do it for the family, whatever, like the family image. And I'm like, I'm at this point, I'm not responsible for I don't carry the family image. That's not my responsibility. But for her, it's like very important. it's like, what would people say, right? What would people say if you're not doing it? And I'm like, I don't really, at this point, I don't really care. I used to care. I'm not gonna lie. I used to care, but it just come to a point that, Viola Davis, she has a very good say. She's like, there is no reason of you setting yourself in fire to keep other people's warm. Like, no.
Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
at one point, you just have to be like, I'm not going to be here on the hot seat all the time to make you guys feel good. It doesn't work like that. So, and saying no to people is also an act of love. It's not just saying yes. At one point, you just need to be like, I'm not your clutch anymore. I'm saying no, and that's just what it is. So it is really hard, right? Because I'm coming from that culture, and coming here, even my mom was like, is it because now you live in Canada that you're acting like Canadian
Well,
people? And I'm like, what's that
you
even supposed to mean?
but you make a good point. She did it. I'm sure somebody before her did it.
Yeah.
And it's like the expectation, because in Black American culture, we run into this a lot too,
Mm,
again, with oldest daughters, like I did it, or the expectations about for women in general that, we're supposed to take care of everybody um, except us,
exactly.
because the mark of being a good woman is how much you martyr yourself, how
Hmm.
much you sacrifice for other people.
Yeah.
That's how you earn your status in that place. And so I get why she's like, girl, what's wrong with you? You were doing this and now all of a sudden you acting like you too good. I get that.
Exactly.
And I think one of the things that I talk about a lot on this channel is asking a belief that we hold, asking ourselves, where does that come from?
Yeah.
You know, is this something of mine? Is
Mhm.
this something that I personally value? Or have I been told by my family, by society, that this is something I should value? This is something I should pursue. So there's that piece. But something that you also said was that you ended up buying a house
Mhm.
because it made sense given how many folks were coming and needing to be able to house everybody and all of that.
Yeah.
And you said that the life that you had envisioned for yourself was not really compatible with home ownership. So let's talk about that a little bit. What was the life that you had envisioned?
So to be, like I said, to be quite honest, growing up for me, I knew that my life will be around, like, traveling, living in different cultures. My goal is it was like, to actually have an international job, right? Like, with international organizations and things like that. So, and I worked really hard to actually get, close to that as much as possible. But again, I've had like few opportunities of being able to go work abroad. My previous employers, they had like international assignments that they could send you to, like 6 months, 1 year, and actually declined few of them because at the time I had like young people in my house, and so I'm like, if I go for 6 months, who's gonna be looking after these kids, right? So, um, eh, and that's just it's just unfortunate, but again, that's the life for me was not definitely not to be in Canada for over 20 years. I love Canada. It's a great country, but it's damn cold. It is cold. And I'm not someone, honestly, after even over 20 years, each time that November, like around this time of the year, I really need to work on my mental health a lot because I know the cold is coming, it's gonna be icy, it's gonna be windy, all of that, and I'm like, I just need to make it through. But what kind of life is that? You just like, 5 or 6 months, of the year, you just like looking forward, to spring and summer. And so if that was me, if that was like if I was left to my own device, I wouldn't have bought a house, to live in. I don't mind real estate investment. That's just a part of investment that I like. But like home ownership to me is just a hassle. Like I can't do anything around the house. Like I have to call the plumber anytime something is wrong with the toilet. I'm not handy. I'm by myself with the kids. So to me, it doesn't make sense that I actually own a house because if you have a house, something's gonna break down. And so I would rather call the landlord and tell him to come and fix it instead of
Oh,
me. There's a lot of things in my house. Someone will look at it like, "Oh, you need to change it." I'm like, "I'm not changing it. It's functional."
you're making an excellent point. Like I don't know if it's the same in Canada, but in the US, particularly
Mhm.
for Black people, we have been fed over and over like that's the first step to building generational wealth. That's the status. Homeowner is a higher status than renter.
Yeah.
So it is something you're supposed to be trying to achieve. And my child bought a house, which I didn't think she should do. But given what prices have done, and she pure dumb luck happened to lock in like a 2.5% interest rate.
Wow.
So
That's it.
like she had no clue what she was doing and did
Mhm.
not listen to any of my advice. But one of the things that she keeps forgetting is that because people talk about like, oh, well, your landlord can go up on your rent, blah, blah, blah. What people often forget is your house note is the minimum that
Exactly.
you will pay per month
Yeah.
dealing with your house. When
Mhm.
I pay rent, I know that's my cap.
Mhm.
But when you are the owner
Yeah.
and the stuff needs to be fixed, like, yeah, you paid your house note, your taxes, your insurance, but there are still other things. So we often like to oversimplify the
Mhm.
numbers when it comes to home ownership. And in case there's anybody who happens to be watching this and they were kind of on the fence, and maybe they just, again, it's one of those things trying to identify, is this me wanting to buy a house? Is that me wanting that? Or is that me being told that's what I'm supposed to want? If there is somebody here that's kind of on the fence, that's something that you need to think about is, like Sam said, the life that you envision for yourself. Does homeownership make sense to you? If you are
Mhm.
not handy, I'm not the most handy, but I am definitely more handy than my child. And so I will be like, well, aren't you going to do X, Y, and Z? Or this is how, and she's just kind of like, no.
No.
Like I said, she shouldn't be owning a house, but
Yeah. And you know what?
luckily it has kept her housing prices lower. But like, she's not really built for it. Not
Yeah.
really.
And you know what? This is actually, I want to mention something because at one point my mom, she was visiting when my siblings were here, and she was like, "Oh, your house is quite small. Why don't you go and buy a bigger house?" And at the time, I was still in the mindset of, yes, it's my responsibility. And I'm like, "Why?" But she's like, "It'll be good." Yeah, at the time, my cousins, they were sharing a room, and she's like, if they can have their if so everybody can have their own space. So that was her thing. And I started looking for houses, bigger houses. So I live in Ottawa. We're across from the bridge from Gatineau, which is on the Quebec side. It's another state or province, and the housing is actually affordable there. And would you believe that I was fully launched into this adventure? I even went and visited houses who had like 4 or 5 bedrooms because I wanted everybody to have their space. And I don't know, I think probably I had a discussion with my sister because we were like, why exactly are we doing this again? To actually have space for those young people, but who's saying that they're going to stay there, right? Like there is no guarantee because they can graduate and then decide to move into another city, to another country. I'm not going to tell them it's because of you that I bought this house, so you need to sit here. So it might work now for a couple of years, but then what am I going to do with a big house down the road? And so that's where we stopped, and we were like, okay, no, like this is the space we have. We're just gonna make the best out of it. And yeah, so that's what happened. Like, some of them are not even living in Ottawa. They moved to other cities that, they moved on their own. And, I'm like, thanks God I didn't actually, actually ended up buying a bigger house and, literally in another province, which we should have created another set of things. But, and I agree with you. It's really, and that it took me a while. And that's why I really want to make sure you really need to know what you want your life to be, and then from there it's easier for you to be able to set boundaries and be able to be like, I'm not moving from this because this is actually in line with what I want. But if you don't know what you want, uh people are just gonna be, having
You
you do
you
what they
can't
want.
have you can't have boundaries. You can't make decisions. You can't make informed decisions
Mhm.
that are aligned with the things that are important to you if you've not really taken the time to sort that out, to examine that. And how old were you when you moved to Canada?
I was 19.
And how long before your sister came?
My sister came probably she came 10 years after.
Okay. So
So my sister who's just I guess a couple of years younger, she came 1 year, but my youngest sister, she came 10 years after. There was a bit of gap.
so you're still trying to figure out who you are and
Oh
what
yeah.
you want out of life before you've got to start making decisions,
Mhm.
like huge life decisions for you personally,
Yeah.
that are all based on accommodating these young people who, like I tell my daughter this all the time, you don't owe anybody anything.
Mhm.
The one exception to that is the minor children that you've brought onto earth. Like,
Exactly.
you do have a certain responsibility to make good decisions and make certain choices for them, but outside
Mhm.
of that, you don't owe anybody anything. And here you were having to make major life decisions or I just thought about this, almost kind of having your wings clipped
Yeah.
because of these obligations that you had to family. Now, you talk about this, you're like, I changed. That was then, that is not now. So, can you pinpoint what changed or what happened that made you reevaluate how you were responding to these obligations that family had placed on you?
So I can probably think of two instances. The first one is, I'll say, probably an argument I was having with my mom. At the time, I was already, realizing that, you know, maybe I was doing too much and putting everybody front, center, and not even thinking about me. And so I was telling her, I was like, I can't be doing all this for people. And she said, you are the oldest. It's normal for you to sacrifice your life for the other ones. And so when
Oh
she
my
used that
gosh.
word sacrifice, it really, I don't know how to explain it, but I was just like, what? Just because I happen to be the oldest, so then my life doesn't count? I need to sacrifice myself for, they're not even my kids, they're my siblings. I love them to death, but it just honestly just like struck a chord in my, and even talking about it, it's taking me back to that and it really
Sacrifice
struck.
is a very
It's a strong word,
strong
but
word.
here's the thing, Adalia. I think she used it because she also did the same to a certain extent. And even, I'm in me rebelling right now. I'm also hoping that somehow she will start pushing against, those societal or cultural norms that, she's still falling for. And so that was kind of like, and I had a conversation with my sister after, and I'm like, and I told her, I'm like, this is not a life we want to have. Like, let's say when we reach 60, 70, I don't think anyone is sitting on their, in their old age saying, I'm so glad that I sacrificed my life for my younger sibling. Like, I don't know. Maybe some people say it,
I don't
but
I don't think so.
I don't think so. And so I told her, I'm like, we need to. That's a wake up call for us. So that's really the first instance. And so the second instance is one of my good friend who actually she's not just my friend. She's my sister's best friend who passed very very young. Um, Mid 30s, pregnant of her first child. And I was like, the rage. I was like, she didn't even have a chance to start living her life. She literally she was about to start her family. She just got a new job and life just stopped. We don't get to decide. God get to decide. But here's the thing, nobody knows when is he is going to decide to call us back. So until then, why can't we focus on exactly what we want to do in this life? And so for me, I was like, listen, I've given 10 years of my life, like blood, sweat, energy, money. You count on it. I've woken up at 3 a.m. in this house to go pick all of them at the nightclub, and I'm working in the following day. I've made the sacrifice. If you want to talk about the sacrifice, guess what? I even made it without even knowing that I was actually doing it. But now that you speak it like that as sacrifice, and with that second, that second unfortunate event that happened, I was like, I think that's what also shook my family, because it was like a almost like a 180-degree shift. I was like, listen, we're not doing this anymore. So you know, it's good. You're graduating, fine. What is the 6 months plan after you graduate? Once you get your job, what is the 6 month? But I'll say even my younger sibling, they made it easy for me, because by the time they were done, of course, the young adults, they wanted to live on their own and experience life on their own. And even that, my mother, because I'm not in touch with my dad, but like my mother was resisting to that. Why are they moving out? Why are they not staying with you? And I'm like, because they want to live life. It's totally normal. But she's like, no, we are family. We need to stay together. And I'm like, no, we can still be family, but not sitting on top of each other. And it was really hard for her to accept, and even until today, and whenever she can talk about it, it's like, does because it doesn't make sense for her. Again, her and my aunt, they have always been together. My cousins and I, we were raised together, so there is that community very aspect. But it's at one point, it just like it's sucking the air out of you. And at the end of the day, everybody is unique. We have our own goals in life, and I think we should strive to actually accomplish those goals. And that doesn't mean you don't love your family, but it's like the actually, it's a way of you telling them, I love you, but I'm still going to live my life here. And it's very important to be able to actually do that.
You know, I have talked about, like, the person I used to be when I was married, and I was the first part of my life, I was doing what a woman is supposed to do. I was putting everybody first. I was sacrificing myself and all of that. And we haven't really even talked about the fact that while you were in essence parenting these siblings of yours, you also had your own children.
Yeah.
And I can't quite remember the quote, but basically, if you wanna know, like, how your children, particularly your daughters, are gonna turn out in life, it is the quality of life for their mother has a very, very strong, correlation there.
Mhm.
And our children need to see us happy.
Yes.
They need to see us pursuing the things that we want to,
Mhm.
because um it one it teaches them, like, that should be something that they are trying to also do, but also it gets them to see us as people,
Mhm.
not just martyrs, sacrifices.
Right.
um and so I'm thinking about, like, all that you've said, but also here your own children are, they're taking all of this in. Like, if there's somebody watching this thinking, well, kids don't be paying attention. Yes, they do. We don't have to actually say, and directly say these things to them. They observe, they notice how we are treated by the people we live with, by the people we partner with, how we interact with our community, with our family. And unfortunately, they pick up those things. Some of those things aren't the most healthy, aren't the best.
Mhm.
So, you having such a graphic reminder
Mhm.
about how short our time is here,
Yeah.
and how we have so little control over how much we have and that sort of thing. For myself as well, that was kind of my wake up. It was more of like, if if I were to pass tomorrow, am I satisfied with the life I've lived up to this point? And my answer was no. So obviously I had to make a change. You decided, I've already given so much. I don't want to give everything. I don't want to give it all.
Yeah.
And given the culture is this expectation, your mama used the word sacrifice. And so how okay, once you started to buck the system,
Mhm.
how was that received? Like when you were like, no, this is not gonna work for me now. How was that received?
Not very well. So not so I'm gonna okay, let me kind of like change it. My younger siblings understood. My siblings understood because also they I think they also saw that there was a bit of I'm not gonna say abuse, but like there were a lot that were asked from me and my sister. And so and they felt bad too, right? So they were like, oh, we're sorry that it's like that. And we're telling them it's nothing to do with you, it's between us and mom. So my siblings fine, they understood. Even when I say my youngest cousins was not coming here and whatnot, they got together and they found a way, for him to stay with someone else. My mom and my aunt, not very well, not well at all. It actually caused a lot of arguments, discussions. It was not, for I'll say, a good chunk of time. It was not pretty, and at one point they even decided to ignore what I was saying and started acting as if it was coming here, and I'm like, don't do that. I'm firm. It's not happening. Again, there are other people that can actually house him. I'm not the only one. And having young kids now in the house with me, I don't really have the time to be. I'm not that available anyway. And again, it's from their perspective. I understand where they're coming from, and also because they are still in that culture. They're still living back home. They come time to time to visit, and I was, I guess, privileged in a way to be exposed to another culture and being able to realize that I actually get to decide, right? I get to decide. It's not because I was born in a certain culture that I have to marry someone from that culture, because that was also a discussion for years and years, that I'm supposed to act, as women act in that culture. And that doesn't mean make me a bad person. No, right? So, but it's a lot of work, and I'm not gonna also lie. I had to do therapy for a little while because it's my roots, and it's almost like I'm becoming someone else. But is it, who was I before? Who am I now? It's a lot of change, and I strongly encourage anyone, especially if you're from that, a very strong culture like that, and you actually deciding to go against the grain, to actually enlist help. Right? It could be a support community, therapy, very important because you really want to do the work that is needed for you to enjoy the next phase of your life, and you don't want to take that baggage with you. So, and until today, Adelia, until today, it's still discussion about different things. I decided to start my family on my own, right? Never heard of, like, how?
I was
Why
gonna
would you
say,
do something like
I
that?
imagine that was a controversial choice as well.
Very controversial, exactly. Very controversial. And again, what will people say? I cannot tell people that you did that. We need to find something to say, and I'm like, I'll let you deal with that. I'm very comfortable with my decision.
What will
So
people say?
exactly, it's a lot of what do people say, what do people think, and I'm like, that nobody's paying my bills. Like, I've never seen anyone tell me, oh, here is some money for your electricity bill, here's some money to pay for your mortgage. So until someone gets to pay for any of that, then I'll give them space to say something. Otherwise, anyone can say anything that they want. I'm totally fine with it. And that's another thing that I think Black women, we need to get comfortable with. People, let people talk. It's okay. Their opinion is none of our business. Let's live our lives because we're not gonna live theirs. We get to live just one life. It's our life. So very important. And I'm saying that again, that's me now. That's not me even like 6, 7 years ago. So a lot has changed.
Did you okay, you've already established this was not your new way of approaching this was not well received
Yeah.
and, was actually received kind of poorly. Um, was there ever a moment that you felt like giving in?
Yes. Yes, because
And
at one point you just want peace. You're like, and you feel like you're like the black sheep, right? And at the same time you're like, I've done this. And that was the thing. Well, you did it for 5 people. Why can't you do it for just one more? It's just one more, the last person. And I, at one point I was just like, okay, it's not like I don't have the space. I have the space and all that. I know I could do it. But again, it's it never
it's not
ends.
what you wanted to do.
Exactly. And it never ends. At one point, if you don't set those boundaries, there is a saying in my culture, I would like I want to be in French. You give people your hand, they're gonna take your arm. That's just what it is. And you're not actually helping them because then you become a clutch, you become their clutch, and they need you all the time, and they don't understand when you say no because you were the yes person. Yes, yes, yes. Yet, for me it was like so many times I'll have like, oh, can you do this? I'll say yes and then go figure out how to do it. That person is not seeing all of the
Yeah.
struggle for you to actually uh, respect that yes. So you need to be able to say no to when it doesn't work for you, and people who love you eventually will understand, right? But it's not easy. So yeah, just to answer your question, I've thought of like, I'm like, listen, just
Well,
forget about the
I
fight.
think
Let him come.
something I like to point out is because of the way we've all been conditioned as women, particularly Black women, if we can do something, if we can make something happen, we feel like we're supposed to.
Yeah,
And there is a huge difference between, well, yes, I can do this,
yeah.
but do I want to do this? Like, I'm back in Spanish class 5 days a week, and it is like having a job. While I could do that, like go to a job every day, I don't want to do that.
Hmm.
And so that's something to remember. Just because there's a what is a meme going around about like making sure that we differentiate between somebody having uh of availability on their schedule and that actually meaning that they are available just because they don't
Hmm.
have anything going on. Like those are two different things.
Yeah.
Now, you you were able to stick to your guns because there is nothing to say. I don't know your mama. I don't know your family, but I suspect you wouldn't have just gotten the last one and that would have been it, and your life would have been yours, and you'd have been completely free of obligations. I suspect that that would not have been the case, that there would have been other things that, you
Yeah.
know, oldest daughters typically contribute to financially.
Yeah.
That would have been your responsibility.
Hmm.
And let's talk about that for a second, because you actually did some back of the napkin math
Yeah.
about what it cost you,
Hmm.
how much to house, feed.
Oh, listen, I didn't even count the housing because, I was
Okay.
already here. But here's the thing, when you come to Canada, you come as an international student. And I don't know in the US, but when you come to Canada as an international student, your tuition are like 5 times what Canadians pay.
Yes, it is. It is ridiculous.
And
I used to teach at a Canadian offshore high school in China,
yeah.
and so I was the teacher who helped the kids prepare their applications for Canadian universities, and when I saw the tuition, I was like, are your parents rich? Like, who's who's paying for this?"
Exactly.
So
So here's the thing. When my mother was like, "Your younger siblings are coming," my sister and I were like, "Okay, well, we'll house them, we'll pay for the transportation, their food." But in our mind, we never thought that we will be covering for tuition. Like, because we know how much it is that. And I'm like, for the salary we're making, like, how are we gonna be able to pay for this? Um, but we never had the conversation. That's another thing, right? Like, in families back home, money is not a conversation. Parents don't talk about money, all of those things. So, and we never, us as kids, will never started on that for that conversation. Like, I would never, I would have never been able to tell my mom, okay, they're coming, but who's paying for tuition? So we just assume that she's paying for tuition. Come to find out that we were the one who had to do it.
oh my gosh.
And honestly, I never really sat to do the calculation because you just like in the midst of it's happening, I'm contributing, she's contributing and everything. But I think at one point I got frustrated because I just like right now I would love to move abroad today. But my finances are not strong enough for me to make that happen. But I'm like, had I had that money in my pocket, I'm sure that I would have been able to even like, be gone a long time ago. And it's frustrating, right? And so just in tuition for, the five that stayed without that we paid for tuition, everything, it's $250,000. It's $250,000.
I suspect it's probably more than that. For
I'm pretty
5
sure.
of
I mean, for the five of them, over I did the calculation quickly and everything, and I shared that with my sister, and I'm like, look, I'm sure we could have made a better use of, a use of that money that is more in line with our goals because that money is gone today, right? Of course, my mom said, she said she'll pay us back, but until I see that, you know, for now, and that's another thing, right? Is it like you paying for it? Is it a loan? With her was a loan, she's saying it as our responsibility to a certain extent. She paid some back. I don't know if she's gonna pay the rest. It's very challenging, and it just also put like a strain on the relationship. Because I'm like, okay, well, you say you're gonna pay back. Are you paying back? And she's not talking about it. I don't really feel comfortable. Well, when actually for the few times I started the conversation, it was like, how can you be so ungrateful? Right.
that doesn't surprise me one bit. In last week's video, I shared the fact, and this still chaps my hide 30 years later, that, my mother was adamant I had to go to college and all of this. And never once was there a conversation about how it was going to get paid for. I'm a kid. I don't know how this stuff works, but I'm assuming you're pushing for this, that you've got some money. And then I get into the school I want to go to, and they don't come through with the money. And so I'm like, no big deal. And she was like, oh yeah, by the way, I don't have any money.
Uh-oh.
I just remember being so indignant, like what? And it just so happened that the University of Houston gave me a scholarship that would cover all 4 years. She was
Wow.
ecstatic. And I'm like, but what was your plan if these people had not given me any, and that you didn't tell me? And so with my own, see, I'm getting worked up already. With my own kid, I was like, look, we need to have a chat about how we're going to pay for this. Like, this is what I have for you.
Mhm.
I know your daddy telling you something, but he's probably not going to kick in any money. So let's look at what we can do so that you can major in what you want to major. How can we cash flow this,
Yeah.
to make it happen? And I just remember making a point to have that conversation, that like, this is what I can do. This is what I am willing to do. This is what you would have to do. And again, I am so not surprised that when you brought up because you're supposed to be thankful for
Yeah,
being here, even though you
exactly.
didn't ask to be born, but you how dare you?
How dare you?
Absolutely, this that doesn't shock me one bit.
Right.
Because my mother, when I got upset, she couldn't understand why I was so worked up.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, I tell you.
So
Um,
we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars
mhm,
that and time
mhm,
that your dream had to be put on hold.
yes.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars that I mean, you did a good thing, but
Mhm.
like if we're looking at it from an investment point of view, I don't know that you're getting to reap much of a return for the money you spent, the labor you put in.
Mhm, mhm.
So, how if because one of the things we talked about or you talked about was wishing that you had come to the point that you had where you were like, "Hold on. I'm
Mhm,
finna I'm finna put some boundaries here."
mhm,
You
mhm.
wish you would have come to that much earlier.
Yeah.
If you had it all to do over differently, how would you do things?
So that's a good question. So I think for me, like I say, I definitely ended up staying in Canada way longer, and I I would have done exactly what I wanted to do, which was essentially once I graduated from university, find a job that actually was offering me that potential to move abroad, and just do that essentially. And so again, with that, not so much without taking in consideration like my what was happening with my younger sibling, but at least not to put myself in a mindset that their well-being is dependent on me staying here and providing for everything, because I'm not the mom. I am not the mom. As much as I love them, I'm not the mom. And so the fact that I had to do that, like people will go to places and people will be talking to about my siblings like as if they were my kids. That should tell you, how it, or like my cousins. And so the reality is like I would have been able to actually, so everything that I've accomplished or started to accomplishing, I would have been able to do it much earlier. And that would have included me not being here in Canada at this point. And so, yeah.
So I'm also thinking from a boundary perspective.
Mhm.
So if we were to roll back things and you came to Canada, went to university, and then when your mom was like, "Okay, I'm sending the next one," what what boundary if you had it to do over again, like what would you have said or what would have been
I
the
would have
condition?
I would have stayed in Toronto. Listen, I prefer Toronto way over Ottawa. Even after living so many years in Ottawa, like I had no business moving out of Toronto. I was so miserable the first 6 months I moved in this city. Every weekend I was like going back to Toronto. It was very pathetic. To the point my boss was asking me, "Are you okay? I see that you're leaving each weekend," and I'm like, "Yeah, I am, but like I hate this city. I can't stand it." Ended up, but so yeah, I would have been. Well, I understand that she got her admission at Ottawa University, but my sister and I, we're here. We have our job. We have our lives in Toronto. I'm sorry, we're not gonna move to Ottawa just for that. I think that should have been the first instance, for her and I to put our foot down and be like, sorry, that doesn't work. We can just move our life. If we happen to live there, maybe, but just once you already move city like that, you can be like, well, then they're not gonna stay with me, right? So what's the point? So I think that would have been the first thing. And the second is, even for their own development, I think it would have been better for them to be on their own instead of living with me as the big sister, looking over their shoulders, making sure, yeah, there are some benefits to that. but also that could have also, be a bit of a deterrent to their development, right? So, they will be relying on me for things when really they should be learning quickly by themselves. And so, and that's funny because I remember my one of my twin brothers, when he started university, he started making friends there, and he met one of, I guess like another guy from also Africa, and him also his sister was already living here when he came, but his sister told the parent, he's not staying with me. You guys will have to either find a space for him on campus or that he rent another apartment. And so my brother was so shocked when he came back. He's like, would you believe that so and so sister say that he's not staying with her? And the parents ended up getting a place for her. And at the time, I was still in my mindset that that's her responsibility. How could she do something like that? That's so, unkind and unfair and totally irresponsible for having your youngest brother coming in the city you're living in and he's not gonna stay with you. Who will do something like that? Well, listen, 5 years down the road, I'm like, this girl, she got a clue early. She understood it quickly. She's like, I have my life to live. He can be in the same city, but he doesn't have to live in my space. I have things that I want to do, and I don't want my younger brother around to, and that's pretty much what it is. And I'm like, no, she's actually the smart one. She understood early, and that, and that's that. And so anyway, it was just funny, my reaction to it at the time when he told me, and even sometimes when I think about it today, I'm like, girl, you got it. I wish I'd
Hey,
known her at the time, and she'd be like,
when you
don't do
know better, you do better,
it.
okay? It I always, you have to forgive yourself for what you did
Yeah,
in the past to survive. Like,
yeah,
you can't Monday morning quarterback it. But you make 2 very good points
hmm,
that because the idea of first of all, the idea of creating any boundaries with family is very difficult for people. And then you're talking about money.
yeah,
It's exceedingly so because as you pointed out yourself, y'all didn't talk about money at all, like, growing up. And
yeah,
so I think you saying that putting not having to give up what you want or make these huge changes to accommodate them, that,
hmm,
like, they what their wants, their needs don't supersede yours. I think
exactly,
that that's our baseline boundary,
hmm,
y'all.
hmm,
Like, that's where we're starting from.
exactly,
And then when you were saying that, like, maybe the boundary could have been like, "Okay, well, I can be," so that they're not in this country completely alone and there's nobody who can help. I can be this person around, but I don't have to be like 150% involved.
yeah,
Because, like you said, had you done something similar to this girl and been like, "That's great. They can come to school here. They can't live with me." One, it's them learning to adult because that's part of what you're supposed to do when you go to university, but also it maybe sets the tone differently. Like you said, you'd already moved cities.
hmm,
That made it really hard to say no
exactly,
to the next one.
yeah. Yeah. And so the other thing also that I had to be that I had to deal with over those years is because their kids were in my house, my mom and my aunt were quite invested in the way that I was running my own house. And so I'm like, this is my house, it's my rules. That might not work for you when they were living in your house, but at this point, it's my house. And even that, I struggle with it, right? Because you'll be like, well, I don't want him to do that. I don't want him to be here. But I'm like, it's my house, you know? So it's really, really important. I think if you are going to be doing anything like that, really take the time to have the conversation so the expectations are clear. Because if they're not clear, you're gonna burn yourself. Like you'll be burned 100%. because the assumptions will not be the same, the expectations are not the same, and that's just gonna, it's like, muddy the water, and that's just gonna create a whole, you know, set of like uh, arguments and all that, and it's not helping. So if you're going to be going that route, take the time and have the conversation, because so everybody's on the same page.
And if you don't decide what you are willing and not willing to do, willing and not willing to put up with, you're letting somebody else make that decision for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And they will make the decision. They will.
They
100%.
will. And, you talk about the dollar, like actually putting a dollar amount, which I mean, given that you fed folks, you clothed folks, you basically raised an additional 5, 6 children on top of your own. Like I said, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that delayed the life that you wanted.
Exactly.
Um, where was I going with that? I was gonna make a segue right there. Oh, yeah. We were gonna talk about you being co-fire or financial independence,
Mhm.
which was one of your goals.
Right.
But when you are financially responsible for so many folks, and these are not necessarily the choices that you would have made to pursue the life you wanted, because we had this question from Claude, who saw you over on Malika's channel,
Mhm.
talking about financial independence with, kids, and you mentioned that you were coast fire.
Yeah.
I consider myself to be coast fire as well. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. And that's why I'm so passionate um about wealth building, because I think what saved me in this whole journey is that I learned very early about investment. I got into investment very early. I never stopped investing, even if I was, reducing my amount, how much I was contributing. And that has really helped me because, of course, as you know, compound interest is our best friend when it comes to investing. And I just realized at one point when I was crunching the numbers, I was just like, oh my God, I'm actually close to five. I'm literally close five. Of course, my goal was to be five by age 40. So I'm 41. I'm still not close to five. But the reality is, like, with especially with young kids now, and all of the things that I had to, the bill that I had to foot over the years, it's really hard because there's so many demands on your salary. And until probably 5 or 6 years ago, I wasn't making six figures. And so all that, and I live in a high cost of living city. So all that is, it's a lot on my money. So yeah, so the cost fi is important for me because, that's why I love to talk about wealth building, especially for Black women, because everybody is demanding of us our time, our money, our energy, and all that. But you need to think about yourself too, your future self. Like, I don't want any Black woman in her 70 and 80 having to work because she hasn't prepared for that, because she took care of everybody in the neighborhood, but then she's in the 70s and 80s. There is no retirement, there is no savings, there is nothing. And so, if you want to do that, please, I beg you, invest. Even if it's $100 a month, even if it's $50 a month, at least have something going on for you. Because there's gonna come a time where physically you won't be able to work, maybe eventually you don't want to work. And so who's gonna come for you? Who's gonna do it for you at that age? Right?
Nobody.
And that's the thing. Why are we giving, giving, giving and forgetting about ourselves? Like, it's not fair. That should not, like, and it's really Black women. Like, I have friends from different races, but I'm like, why? And it doesn't even matter. Black women from Africa, Black women from America, Black women from the Caribbean, and I'm like, what is it exactly? Like, I don't get it. Black men don't have the
We
same pressure, but Black women, oh yeah, you're gonna raise this child and this other child and feed this child and do this and do that. When are you doing something for yourself?
we hand out life jackets to everybody. We make sure
Everybody,
everybody's
while
got
we're
their life
drowning,
jacket on,
while we're
and
drowning.
then
We
And
give it
then
away.
we look around and there is no life jacket for us.
Yes.
You got to put yours on first. And so, like, you told me that, and you've just said it here, duh, that allowing this to take place significantly delayed where you could have been financially on your wealth building journey.
Hmm.
um, Being coast fi, and if for those of you that are not familiar with that term, fi is financial independence. Coast fi means that there is enough money invested in various places that if you let that alone to grow, you've got your retirement covered. But maybe like right now you just work a job to cover your
Hmm.
everyday expenses,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
you're kind of coasting
Mhm.
into financial independence.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And so luckily you did invest what you could when you could.
Yeah.
Or, I hate to think about this scenario. Here you could be, like, just now getting started, and no matter how much money you have to invest or put toward building wealth, starting sooner is always better than starting later. Doesn't mean it's
Exactly.
too late. There's not really a too late, but
Mhm.
starting sooner is always a better one. One thing that is I'm very big about is, particularly in the US,
Mhm.
there's this idea that parents are, if you're a good parent, you are going to pay for college so your child doesn't have to take out a loan. And that is a great idea. However, given the price of university, giving the price of being alive, I'm not sure how you can do all of that. And it breaks my heart, the women I see who have they're done all this to make sure that their kid didn't have to pay for college, but they've not put any money aside for when they stop working, retirement.
Mhm. Mm.
And your child has a much longer runway to figure out how to pay for secondary education versus you have a finite set of years to put aside to grow money for that retirement. And so
Yeah.
that's, like I said, that's one of the reasons I had this conversation with my child, because I was like, I'll tell you what mama's not going to do.
Mhm.
I'm not going to jeopardize my ability to take care of myself in retirement
Yeah.
so that I could pay for you to go to school. Now,
And
I'll work and help pay tuition with you, but
mhm.
I still got to put money aside.
And the other thing is, of course, I'm not advocating for that. But push comes to shove, the child can get a loan to study. Well, guess what? There is no loan to retire. That's just what it is.
None.
So, and the other thing is, if you don't really plan for your retirement, and I'm really trying to break, let's say, I'm trying to break some, I guess, traditions here. Because if I know my future is already funded, that means I'm not going to be relying on my kids in my golden
That
year.
part.
So I'm freeing them as well by doing that. That's like generational wealth, right? So, in my culture, and that's not my case because my mom, she's she has never asked me for money for herself or anything like that. But like I know friends, and it's really my culture. Essentially, you are meant, you're supposed to take care of your parents because your parents have given you everything they have. It's your duty to take care of them. And so if we do it a different way, where us as parents, we take care of our future self, that means that essentially our kids they don't have to do it. So then they can focus on their family instead of being, like you say, that sandwich generation where you're taking care of parents and then you have also your own kids to take care of. Life is already expensive as we know it. What's going to happen in 15, 20 years, 30 years? I don't think it's going to be cheaper than today. And I don't think it's fair to be putting our children in a situation where, because we did not, unfortunately, we did not set those boundaries so we could take care of ourselves. Now we sort of relying on them to take care of us in
And
our old
that
age.
you're right. No, that's the biggest gift you can give your child, and the sandwich generation folks I know are in here nodding their heads like, that's the gift you give your child is that they don't have to worry about you, and that was what I decided that I was going to do because my mother retired at 52 with no plan and no money. I'm not sure what she was thinking. I generally think she was a smart woman, but she did not think that through. And she ended up passing away before she was 60. She was never she didn't live long enough to even collect Social Security. But I it was not lost on me that I would have been responsible
Mhm.
for funding her life at the same time. I was a public school teacher. I couldn't afford that. And
Mm,
so I that was one of the things that drove me to figuring out how do I fund retirement because I don't want to put this on my own children.
yeah,
And so like you said, traditional cultures very much it is you make this sacrifice and it pays off in your children, but we are witnessing people get sandwiched,
exactly. Yeah,
which tells us that that may have worked, may have previously. I don't think that works for the world that we live in now.
it's really challenging. It's very challenging. Yeah.
Okay. I dropped a link in the chat. There is also a link in the description for an event that you have coming up. So if our talk about investment and wealth building and setting financial boundaries has gotten some wheels to turning and gotten you to thinking, um, you might want to check out Sam's event. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, so honestly, it's something that I've been thinking of for years. This year is our second edition, and it's just that because I would like for more Black women to be more focused on their money, to be comfortable talking about money and growing their money and building wealth. And so I felt like it would be good to have a summit for us Black women coming together and essentially doing just that, learning from people who have done what we want to do, and essentially, getting the knowledge, but also establishing a community. So we also do have a Facebook group of the same name. It's a growing group, and my hope is that that becomes the sacred space for Black women to come and exchange freely about money, because money is so taboo in our society. Nobody wants to talk about it. We all use it. We all spend it. We all earn it. But nobody wants to talk about it. And the reality is, I early on, especially when I got really interested in financial independence, I was in a lot of circles where people were really talking freely about money, but not many Black women, not many Black people, to be quite honest, in those circles. And I was just like, who are you guys? Like, doesn't work like that in my neighborhood. But I just realized that, they're exchanging, they're learning from each other, and they're motivating also each other in accomplishing their goals. And when you look at the stats today, whether it is in the US or Canada, honestly, for me, it's alarming, right? Like, the net worth of a single Black woman, which is like 5 times lower than the net worth of a single uh, a single white woman, or like, us Black women will have all of the degrees, all of the credentials, and still being like, 60 or 70% underpaid compared to a white male. And you just realize that even already the money that we are making, it's smaller. But so we need to find a way to make that money work for us. We cannot. So here's the thing: the wealth is not gonna be us doing it all. Like how much you're gonna have for your retirement will not be how much you have earned. So you need to find how you're going to be that smaller pool of money you're getting from your hard work is like, what can I do? I'm gonna spend some, but I need to find a way to invest some for the long term so that money can work for me and grow for me. So then when I'm ready to retire, that pot of money is sitting there to allow me to have the retirement that I actually want. Honestly, for like I say, I don't want any Black woman in her 60s, 70s, 80s having to work because unfortunately she did not plan for it. And so that summit is really, really for that. It's for Black women who are really eager about building wealth, building something for themselves. We talk a lot about moving abroad, and let's be honest, a lot of Black women in the Exodus Summit, even when you ask them what is the main reason of you not moving, you will see it's money. It is money. Oh, that job, I can't take it with me. I don't have enough money. All of those things. So it is a real thing that is really, really preventing us from accomplishing our dreams. And so I want us to attack this head first and be like, what exactly do I need to do? Which tools do I need to have? Which accountability partner do I need to get here to actually accomplish what I want to accomplish as far as money goes? So we can live the life that we want to live. Because again, at the end of the day, it's about the life we want to live. And honestly, we deserve to live the life we want to live. We deserve that 100%. So yeah, that's what it is.
Money, you talked about the taboo nature of having conversations about money, and I know one widely held belief is that, like, being focused on money is, like, uncouth, and it good people aren't worried about that. Here's the thing, I live the life I live now because the money I saved and invested gives me options. I've
Exactly.
told this story many times about when I decided I was tired of my employer's nonsense in Kuwait. I was like, "Bet, I'm out. I'm leaving." And I look around and there's all these other women who have to put up with
Hmm.
the the things that were going on there because they were not in a financial situation. They didn't have the options. That's what money does for us. It gives us money is not good or bad.
Hmm. Hmm.
Money gives us the options. And so if anything we've said here tonight resonates with you, you should check out um, is it, it's Black Women Building Wealth or Wealthy Black Women, that's what it's called.
Yeah, the wealthy Black woman. So it's a different name. It's something that I'm still trying to figure out, but it's a different name from the YouTube channel.
Okay.
And yeah, and it's on November
When
16th.
okay, November
November
16th, it's one
Yeah,
day?
it's one day. Yeah, it's a boot camp. We start at 7 a.m. all the way to 8 p.m. So be ready to be informed. But last year was such a great time. I really, really enjoyed it. So I thought, I'm hoping to be able to organize it every year, and I do it in November because for us in Canada, November is actually our financial literacy month. And I want to do it all. The other reason for November is like we all know which month is coming after November, right? It's December, and if I can prevent anyone from overspending over Christmas and being really, like focused on their goals, at least the money goals from that summit, even ahead of starting a new year. For me, it's already a win. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so if you just tuned in late, there is a link in the description, to the Wealthy Black Women Summit, November 16th.
Yeah.
All day boot camp will get you straight as far as ways in which you can put your money to work and start building wealth so that you have the options to pursue the life you want.
Exactly.
Thank you, Sam, for joining us tonight and sharing your story. The number of comments where it was like, oh, she sounds just like me. She is telling my story. Like, there's a lot of folks who have found themselves in this same situation. And I hope that hearing from you about your ability to kind of find your
Mhm.
voice and be able to assert some boundaries gives them some inspiration that they too can do the same. It again, y'all, it's never too late. Yeah, we wish we would have done something earlier, but it is never too late to basically take control of our lives for ourselves. So thank you so much for
Thank you for
joining us
having me. This
tonight.
was great.
I will be live again on Friday. Um, Jocelyn will be here to talk about moving her family to Ethiopia. She was on the channel previously. Since then, they've lived in a couple of other countries. She was the family of 5 living in Honduras.
Mm.
So, and I'm trying to think of what time is it. I think around 2 p.m. No, yes, 2 p.m. Eastern. I know it'll be noon in Mexico City. So
Mhm.
whatever time that is where you are on Friday, y'all are all invited to join me live. And until then, take care, everybody. Good night.
Buenas noches.